Good afternoon, Franciscan University. My name is Angelina Toole with this Franciscan Beat News Brief. Beginning in 2020, Evelyn Lundy, better known as Sunflower Catholic, has made quite the social media presence, amassing over 60,000 followers on her socials, such as TikTok and Instagram. Today, she is joining us to speak about her platform and her mission. Evelyn, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us. So could you give us a little background on the lifestyle habits that you have that caught the attention of so many people and what inspired you to make these decisions?
So I'd say the main lifestyle changes that I've made that kind of catch people's attention are a vegan diet. That one is like very radical to a lot of people. And also attempting to limit my plastic waste. At one point in time, I considered myself more zero waste. Since the beginning of the pandemic, that's a less realistic title for me, just because so much has changed with the way things are packaged. But I definitely continue to try to reduce my plastic use, and then just holistic, more sustainable lifestyle in general. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm sure you probably hear this all the time, especially in the culture that we have nowadays, or that people say, I would go vegan or I would go plastic free, but it's just too hard or it's too expensive, or there are people who say, oh no, I like bacon too much. So what
Absolutely.
advice or encouragement do you have people who are kind of afraid to step and make that switch?
So first of all, I think it's super important to clarify that these things can be more expensive in certain areas, but they save me money the way that I do them. And it was kind of trial and error, and I did perhaps spend more money on some things. But especially with, I'll start off with like veganism. For example, if you go to the grocery store and you're just buying like the ingredients to make something, buying meat is going to cost you more than buying tempeh anytime. But if you're buying things that are pre-made, which I know convenience can be a huge factor, especially for like college students or things like that, I acknowledge that it is more expensive to buy like a pre-made vegan organic meal than a pre-made like
Lunchable.
Yeah. But like, with a little bit of meal prep and just like some planning ahead, you can cook things from scratch, and I save a lot of money doing that. And then as far as reducing plastic waste, again, there are some things that are like initially more expensive. Like if you wanted to go for like a really fancy like aluminum bottle that's like fully recyclable for your shampoo. But there's also shampoo bars that are $15 that I go through 2 a year, and
wow,
that saves me money. So it really just depends on how you look at it. And it does take some trial and error, but there's so many people out there who create content about it that if you go and look for what other people have had to say, a lot of the times you can find it without having to experiment too much.
That's fantastic, and I'm assuming that you are happier with the switches that you have made.
I absolutely am.
Good, yes. And what would you say to people who are struggling with anxiety and fear over how their family or their peers would react to making these kind of switches?
Yeah. My family initially was very hesitant, especially with veganism. I come from, I'm originally from Wisconsin, so dairy and deer sausage and lake fish was like kind of my upbringing. But I just had to like kind of do my research and show them like, no, actually you can eat this way and you won't die. As far as reducing plastic, my family is more just like, why? not as concerned. But again, once you start to make those changes, they're just kind of like, oh, Evelyn does what she wants. And it's less of like a big deal.
Right.
Some people might be shocked initially, but like they get used to you.
And I'm sure that one saves you money too,
Mm-hmm.
all the reusable things. And did you have any fears when making these decisions, and was it easy for you to make the switch?
Yeah, so as far as like going vegan, that was a long transition. I went vegetarian about 7 years ago, and then I've been
Wow.
vegan for about a year. So like the transition period between cutting out meat and cutting out everything else was like very extended, but it was easy for me because I took my time and I did it at my own pace and I did it for what was realistic for me. And then as far as like reducing plastic, I kind of take it one thing at a time, and that's very manageable. I watched a YouTuber who recommended just like doing a trash audit. So you just like look at what you're throwing away every week and look at what you throw away the most. And the thing that you throw away the most, try to find a way to not throw that thing away. And so then you just do it one thing at a time, and it's easy enough.
That's the perfect way to ease into it. I think I compare it to running. You don't run a marathon the first day that you get out there. And what inspired you to make these decisions? You just woke up one morning and said, no more deer for me today.
I, from a very young age, was just uneasy with the idea of killing things.
Right.
But a lot of people think that's like very blunt. But I grew up around like not the people who go to the grocery store and like pick it up from like the meat aisle and it's like packaged and you're like, oh, that's just, you know, what it is. Like I grew up around like the actual production of these things. So like seeing that, I always was kind of uneasy with it. And then it kind of was realizing that you can have a diet where you don't eat those things, and it's also better for the earth, and it's better for just a lot of like health reasons and things like that too, that I decided like, yeah, no, I am gonna do this. And so that's when I went vegetarian. My family was very strong that like, they're like, okay, you can go vegetarian, but like veganism, that's too far. So it did take until I was in like my like senior year of high school to like kind of start more easing into that, just because it is very hard to do when you live at home. But I always kind of had like the drive to do that. And then as far as reducing plastic waste, I saw a TED Talk in an environmental science class and I went, wow. And then I just started researching it, and it's easy enough. So I did it.
Right. That's also very inspiring, that especially at a young age, when you don't necessarily have your own money, to be making a lot of these choices, that you still had that drive. What kind of role does your faith play in this? And how does that maybe cause conflict between other people of the faith that you share, who don't quite understand where you're coming from?
Yeah. So I'd say that like I kind of started these changes right around the time I started getting into my faith, and it all ties together because it just was like I was reaching that age where you start questioning things, just like anything that you've been raised with. And it wasn't necessarily that I just wanted to take everything I was raised with and go the other direction, although sometimes it works out that way. It was more that I was looking at it and I was like, why? And with the faith, there's that one Mother Teresa quote that I do not have perfectly, but she says like to wash the dish, not because you've been told to or because it's dirty, but because you love the person who's going to use it next. And I've like applied that so much to my view of like the environment and the impacts that my choices have on other people. And that is kind of, at the end of the day, the heart of all of the changes that I make, is just the impact that my choices have on other people. Because it's very easy to ignore the individual decisions you make every day that like on the surface level don't seem to be impacting anyone else. But when you look into it and when you realize how much they do impact other people, like animal agricultural industries disrupt food systems in third world countries and can contribute to environmental issues and things like that. And when you start to realize how much your choices are impacting other people, even though you might be removed from it, it's an inspiration to try to be a little bit humble, honestly, and be like, this is hurting other people, and maybe I should step back. And
it can be so hard when you don't see the impact in front of you.
It is. And so that's where I think the conflict with other people within the Catholic faith can kind of come in, because it's very easy to just, remove yourself from it and say, well, if you look at Genesis, I want to say it's 9:3, where God says, you can eat the animals. Then he says you can eat the animals, so we should do it. And while I don't disagree that it's like morally permissible, theologically permissible, that doesn't show the whole picture. And a lot has changed since the day of Jesus pulling a fish out of the ocean to the way that our food systems look now and things like that. So I don't disagree with people within Catholicism on what they think they're arguing with me on, but it can create a little bit of tension.
So what keeps you going amidst all of the negative comments and reactions? How is it worth it to you?
I do on Instagram, especially. This is where it's the most feasible platform for this, but I do little let's chat boxes where I'm like, just tell me something, tell me about your week, give me your prayer intentions, anything like that. And I get every single time I do one of those, someone saying, you inspired me to look at this or think about this, or maybe just start to question it. Even if they didn't change it, they're just thinking. And like the fact that I am just like planting those seeds and like possibly planting far more that I'll like never know about, just gives me the like, yeah, I am gonna keep doing this because there are people who care, even though they might not be as vocal as the people who disagree with me.
That's wonderful. And so how do you even start these conversations? Do you have any encouragement for someone who might be nervous to defend their beliefs? They know what is close to their heart, but they don't necessarily know or have the courage to speak up about it. Or for someone who isn't afraid, they also know, but they just don't know how to bring it up. They don't want it to be awkward. What would you say to them?
Honestly, it can be really, really hard to engage in these conversations with people that you know in real life, which is why my platforms are kind of a nice way that I can go about having those conversations because people don't feel personally attacked. They do sometimes still, actually, but less so people feel attacked by a video of me coming up on their For You page than they'd feel attacked if I'm like sitting there eating lunch and I'm like, do you know where that came from? Like, that's not a recommended approach. But it can be hard to have those conversations, but honestly, I don't usually start them with people in my life. I don't say, have you thought about the impact of your choices? I just make my own choices, and people are curious enough to ask about it. So that's
awesome.
Yeah.
That's really great. And then lastly, this is more of a fun question, but why did you choose the handle Sunflower Catholic?
Yeah, so when I started my content on Instagram, it was more apologetics based, and I hadn't really kind of gotten into the whole like lifestyle aspect of it yet. And so it was just called The One True Faith, and it was just like very straightforward. And I hadn't posted any pictures of myself, and everyone thought I was a man. Like I would receive DMs and people would be addressing me like with like male pronouns, and I was like, not quite. So this was very surface level, but I was just like, what do I like that sounds kind of feminine that I can just mash with Catholicism and create an image, I guess.
It's great. It's catchy.
It worked.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It was really wonderful to hear all of this. Very inspiring. And I'm sure that you're on a great path. So typically to end a broadcast, we have either our guest or the anchor say, stay blank, Steubenville. And they get to make up their own catchphrase. Someone says, stay hydrated, Steubenville. Someone else says, stay holy. So what is your message to Steubenville?
I guess if I had anything to say, it would just be stay questioning, like think things through. So yeah, stay questioning, Steubenville.
Thank you so much. Stay questioning, Steubenville. We will see you tomorrow.